Hi everyone, I'm Ben Wright, successful entrepreneur, corporate leader, and expert sales coach to some of the most talented people our amazing planet has to offer. You're listening to the Stronger Sales Team podcast, where we bring together and simplify the complex world of B2B sales management to help the millions of sales managers worldwide build, motivate, and keep together highly effective sales teams. Teams who grow revenue and make their businesses actual profits. Along the journey, we also provide great insights and actionable steps to managing your personal health. A happy and productive you is not only better for your teams, but everyone around you. So if you're an ambitious sales leader who wants to build the highest performing and engaged teams, Stronger Sales Teams is right where you need to be. Welcome back to Stronger Sales Teams, the place where we provide real-world and practical advice to help you develop super-powered sales teams. Well, we have I was going to say fresh off the boat, but that's not the right words, a newly crossed border from Canada, as I say, into the USA, and not a citizen, but certainly a new resident in America, in the United States, of Glenn Poulos. He's pulled up his old business. He's exited his old business, packed his bags, gone south across the border, now living in Orlando, and he's here to talk to us today about what we talk about every week, sales teams and the wonderful world of sales. Just to give you a bit more background other than a border-loping Canadian, Glenn is he's president of his own company. It's called Prog USA. Very heavily involved in the electrical testing, measurement, equipment, distribution game. Really nice industry when it comes to talking about sales and sales theories, because it's such a long-standing, mature industry, and you really do need to be on top of the game. And I've seen that firsthand in my experience in this industry. He's a published author. Book's called Never Sit in the Lobby, and the piece I like is 40 years experience in sales, having not only run his own businesses but also scaled sales teams across North America and now into the States as well. So he's also exited businesses, and they were well over 8-figure businesses. He's a speaker, he's a podcast host. So what he does across many channels, and he's also a LinkedIn top voice around practical strategies that help salespeople both close deals, avoid those common types of traps. And he has a very direct and honest style, which we've found out so far today. So, Glenn, welcome to the Stronger Sales Teams podcast. Can you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Oh, thanks, Ben. And 40 years is hard to believe, but 2025, it became 40 years because I started it in 1985. And prior to that, I was a failed government worker. So I got kicked out of the Canadian government for working too hard, as I like to tell the story. And my boss came to me in 1985, and he suggested that I would be better suited in a different business, and he suggested I go into sales. So I joined sales in 1985, and that was where I started my thing. And I worked for a company for a number of years, and then I realized that sales was a kind of a cheat code for making a lot of good money when you maybe don't have a super higher education, right? Like a brain surgeon makes a lot of money, but they have to go to school for 15 years, right? I had a little bit of college, and I learned that you could make really good money in sales. I learned you can make even better money by running and owning the sales company and hiring extra people and leveraging not only yourself, but others. And so after a few years, I approached those guys about starting a business, spinning off a piece of their technology, and they turned me down. And so I decided to quit. And in 1991, and I started my first business in this burgeoning market, which they said I wouldn't be successful. It was the cell phone industry, and we all know the cell phone never really went anywhere, right? Like, who needs a cell phone? And that was in 1991, actually. And Canada was just building the analog cell phone network at the time. I'd had a cell phone, I guess, for a few years, and ran a company till the early 2000s, sold it, got a chance to start another company doing similar business, ran it for 15 years. And in 2022, I sold that. I did 3 years with the private equity, having sold the business, and that kind of timed out at the end of last year. And in anticipation of that, I bought a business doing a similar kind of business, but one in a different country, in a different technology area, so that I was honoring my competitive, the no competes and things like that, right? And the other difference from what I'm doing in Florida is that my first two businesses, the first one I had two partners. There were three of us total. The second business I had one partner, and the third business I'm just doing it by myself. And it's kind of like just a can you do it on your own kind of thing, or where can you take it? Now, I only have a few years. I'm 63 now, so it's not like I have 15 years again to do another 15-year stint, but like to see where I can take it for a few years and then maybe retire into the Florida and or Canadian sunset, one or the other. So.
Yeah, cool. I like it. It's a few things to unpack there. 1990, did you say 1991 into the cell phone industry?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's
I think
correct, yeah.
What am I? I'm 42, and my first cell phone or mobile phone I think I had was when I was 15, so that would have been 1997. I think it was one of those Nokia 6510s. It was it was 2 cents per text message, $2 a minute for calls, and we'd tap away on the click, 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 click on the phones. And I think I had the blue face and the black background, and my mate and I used to text each other. We'd hide it under the desk at school and text each other. And you're right. The industry really hasn't matured at all over the last 30 years. I mean, we're still not relying on mobiles at all, nor do we have any form of screen time every day. But in fact, I'd say it's very similar to the sales industry. We talk about evolution, and look, no doubt the cell phone industry and mobile phone industry has evolved tremendously, but sales has as well. I remember doing a podcast about 20 episodes ago around the 10 commandments of sales from one of my friends when she was back at university in the 90s. And gee, they've evolved, right? I think out of the 10, we came to a conclusion that there were 4 that have remained, there were 4 that have changed drastically, and there were 2 that you'd argue have evolved. So a 60% change rate to the world of sales. And of course, the pieces that had remained were very much the principles around building relationships, around listening, around seeking out needs, and so forth. So, and look, for everyone listening, if you hear a pant in the background, they're Glenn's
I'm sorry about my
lovable
dogs.
2 dogs. We're all for a bit of personality on the podcast. So sitting down there close to his feet.
I'm praying they go to sleep soon. They should normally they fall asleep. They're just absolutely insane. The timing couldn't be worse. I'm sorry for that. So. But I'll make up for it with some golden gems. I promise. I will speak over them and speak hopefully spit some good gems while we're trying to avoid listening to them.
Excellent. Well, pots of gold will be fantastic, but a bit of personality into these podcasts is absolutely fine. That's life. Okay, so today, what we're here to talk about is how you can spot future mistakes or problems within sales teams, and certainly the aim is to avoid them down the track. Your dogs agree with me right now. And if we can't avoid them, how we can certainly fix them. So that's going to be our focus for the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. And okay, so let's kick straight into the most common mistakes that you see sales teams or sales people make. I would love to hear your thoughts around that, Glenn.
Okay, so the one mistake that I see the salespeople making, and now I'm hiring in a new company, new job, new world, and so I'm meeting a lot of new people. I came from a business from 15 years where a lot of the guys had been with me the whole time, but I'm realizing a lot of people they're trying to virtualize everything, right? They want to do everything from the comfort of their cockpit with 3 monitors, and I can do it over Zoom, and that's the absolute biggest mistake I'm seeing them make right now, is not getting in front of the customer and trying to convince themselves that virtualize is good enough, right? And it actually isn't. And the reason why is because you can never see really what the competitors are doing when you're on Zoom, right? When you get there, when you're in the building and you get behind the door, you can actually see what, the coffee mugs, the, water bottles, the mouse pads, the pens, and t-shirts of the competitors that they're wearing, and where you really fit in, and you can see how your product will be used. And so, thinking that you can do it remotely is probably the biggest mistake that I see them, that I see the salespeople themselves making. The companies that are hiring salespeople, some of the things that I see them making are lack of clear goals, lack of, the onboarding is shoddy at best, right? There's no clear, it's kind of like sink or swim, sell or you're fired, that kind of a thing. not setting a set of clear metrics, right? Like forward-looking metrics, reverse-looking metrics. How many calls do you have planned? How many calls did you make? What's in the funnel? What's your close ratio? What's your gross margin? Monitoring and managing to those metrics on a weekly basis is one of the winning factors that I found in my last business. And it really wasn't until we put a lot of that in place that we turned the business, where we really turned a corner in the business, is what I'm trying to say. And so monitoring to metrics is a huge part of it. And so I mean, I could keep going, but those are some of the top things that I see companies making. And then the salespeople themselves, we can dive into whatever aspects you'd like to on that too.
Yeah, okay. So 3 things that have come out of there. Number 1, you're seeing sales teams get lazy. So instead of getting out, hitting the pavement, wearing the rubber off their shoes, and meeting their customers face to face, there is too much selling done virtually. And look, I certainly acknowledge that there is more efficiency now and effectiveness, I think, in having a hybrid, a combination as to how we meet customers, right? We don't necessarily need to go and meet customers 5 times face to face to get a deal done. But certainly when we're talking about enterprise level deals, there is a certain amount of face to face work that we need to get done. So fundamentally agree with you there. Second piece you spoke about there is an onboarding program that isn't really setting up salespeople to sell. So we're seeing, or you're seeing, the really common mistakes being that simply people are onboarded into a business and it's, hey, get out there and go and sell, right? No sales process, no strategy, no training, no real onboarding program. And the third piece there is very much around not measuring progress, right? And measuring progress doesn't always have to be results. I certainly, with my teams, I measure results, but I also measure pipeline size and I measure number of meetings. They're the 3 key metrics that I measure with any team that I work with. So, and each of those you measure at different stages of a salesperson's life cycle and a business's life cycle. So, okay, great. And I think those 3 are very chunky, common mistakes that we see salespeople out there make. But certainly the first one, I think we see there is a growing trend of reducing time out in front of customers. And I don't know if there's enough analysis around how that correlates to close rates. So I really like that one. Okay, so let's look at the inverse of that. How do you see really high-performing sales teams being built without jargon, without fluff, without wasting people's time?
Well, so the first thing is when it comes to hiring people, as I'm learning, again, like I said, in the deepest of the trenches, and putting my money where my mouth is, because I came from an $84 million company to a $4 million company, and I'm rebuilding it from the ground up, and the numbers are just completely different. And and so I'm actually having to walk the talk and talk the walk that that I've been touting for years, but I'd kind of gotten separated from as well, right? But the first thing is first of all, when you're building a high performance team, it's like hire slowly, fire quickly, right? And so that's one of my golden rules, and I'm not happy that I have to adhere to it, but I'm proud that I'm able to do that, in the sense that you're given the 90 days in most environments to have a guilt-free. You can let people go in 90 days without having to give any reasons. You can just say, hey, it's not the right fit. I'm sorry, we're moving on. We're going to go a different way, right? And you really need to make sure that if you've made a mistake, that you correct it right away. It's not like, oh, well, it's the summer and it's slow, and it's the moment you sort of feel like you've made a mistake, you have to correct the mistake, right? And that's one thing. 2, I find, you need to make sure that you're rewarding the right behavior, and it's not just top line. Like we all know people in companies where they were the top producer, but they were a nightmare to deal with. You needed a bulldozer or a sweep and a mop and, a garbage pail behind them to clean up the mess that they made on every deal, even though they were the top producer. And really what that translates to is not adhering to the company's core values. And so I find that, setting core values to the company, is really important. And then you want to hire, fire, reward, motivate, acknowledge core values through a series of call outs and also sort of rewards and punishments, right? That people are not only performing to the metrics, like you said, pipeline, deals closed, et cetera, but also they're doing it in a way that meets the values of the company. And they're not treating the inside staff like garbage or whatever, right? So you want to be rewarding the right behavior. You want to be measuring and monitoring towards the core values. Again, like I said, cut the weak links quickly. And I guess also you want to be looking at their sort of total available, not just the market. That's not really what I want to say. I don't have an acronym for it or whatever, but basically you want to be constantly raising the bar on, hey, you're in Boston or you're in San Francisco, and yeah, I mean, everyone has a $2 million quota, but you should have a $5 million quota, right? I mean, you're getting to $2 million without even having to leave your chair, because you're in San Francisco and that's a bigger market. You need so you want to be raising the bar on a consistent basis, right? And so those are some of the things that I'm constantly, conditioning myself to do, and also others when I'm talking to them about building the right team. And the other thing is make sure your comp plan rewards the behavior that you're looking for. And, and that's core, as simple as it's really base and commission. But I mean, the comp, people will figure out how to game the comp plan immediately. It's what people do. It's human nature. It's not like a bad trait, but they're going to do what you pay them to do, literally, right? Like that's what people will do. And so you want to make sure that you design a comp plan that gets your job done, right? And there's lots of comp plans and lots of ways of adjusting the variable and the base, et cetera. But you want to make sure your comp plan really feeds into the goals of the business.
Okay. There's something I really like about interviewing business owners, and particularly business owners that have been able to scale past the founders North Star. And what I mean by that is that they've been able to build teams out around them who run the business. And at an $84 million a year business, you've had to do that. There's no way you're running that on your own. And the reason that I really like interviewing business owners who've been able to do that is because they're able to really simplify some of the key goals of building teams or selling or having a successful business. Because the corporate, the corporate haze doesn't exist in those business owners. And there's three things there that you've jumped on. Number one, you hire someone, you don't think it's working, make the call. Far too often, I see sales leaders give new salespeople just too much time. And the reason that they give them too much time is, A, there's some good faith in there. Without doubt, you want to see the best in people and you want to give them the chance to succeed. And I understand that and can certainly resonate with that. However, I think you can work through that pretty quickly as a leader when you apply the right metrics, right, to that salesperson, which is the second area you dived into there. So if you are in any doubt as to whether or not this person's going to make it, and it's left to goodwill to make that decision, having the right metrics to recognize exactly how they're working, right? And in the early stages, it's not about sales numbers, it's about meetings, it's about quotes, it's about some very different behaviors. And that second theme you touched on has really wrapped in behaviors, metrics, and compensation plans, which you wrapped in later on. So make sure you're setting your team up that you're recognizing behaviors that are the ones that you want, that you are using metrics, right, to recognize the outputs and the inputs that are the ones that you want. And then also that you have a compensation plan that is absolutely motivating, again, the right behaviors and the right actions that you want. So really like that. For me, that is very, very powerful. And the third thing you spoke about then is always challenging people that what they're achieving isn't necessarily enough, because different levels of experience will drive different sales, and different territories or different products will drive different results. So having that focus, that Kaizen focus around continuous improvement, right, I think is absolutely fantastic. So really like that. Okay, so we've identified what some of the common mistakes are. We've spoken about how we can build out those high-performing teams about or without any fluff. What about accountability? How do you build that into your process, and how does that help you avoid some of those future problems and future mistakes?
So again, when it comes to accountability, for me, it kind of boils down to, and in my last business, we followed the program called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a very popular system running around the world. And so a lot of really what I've learned in the last 5 or 6 years, kind of coming out of a lot of the disciplines that I learned running EOS, which is an operating system, just like DOS, right? How do you run your computer? It tells you what to do when you're moving files, whatever, right? So, accountability to me is like clear expectations, public goals, like goals that are understood by not only the person, but other people know the goals of those people, right? And then, a cadence of check-ins that is repeatable and disciplined, strictly disciplined. Not, for instance, it might be a one-on-one, it might be biweekly, it might be weekly, there might be monthly check-ins of different sorts and what have you. But whatever the meetings are that are set up in your system, the only excuse to not be there is vacation or a funeral, and it has to be your own funeral, right? And that's the way we used to joke about it, that if there's a meeting, you need to, at these kind of check-ins, the one-on-ones or these specific kinds of meetings, you need to be there, phones off, laptops closed, et cetera. And, these people, in order to be accountable, they need to own the outcomes of the results, right? They can't be blaming others. You can't be hide behind losses and, while you're touting up the wins or, things like that, right? I also find that one good thing about to drive accountability is kind of this concept around leaders go first, right? And so, I'm kind of the type, where I want to be, I'm not the one that rolls in at 10 and leaves at 2 because I'm the owner, and I'm not saying I'm the first guy there every day, because it's just, we all have different lifestyle schedules, but I show up at a repeatable time and I leave at a repeatable time and I put in a full day, right? And when I'm there, I'm either available or not available, right? In other words, my door is literally always open, unless it's closed because I'm on a Teams or some other kind of meeting of some sort or another, right? And so I find that, leaders should drive the behavior that you expect in others, and when you see things that are right or wrong, call them out fast, call it out fast. I kind of repeating myself, but you if it matters, you want to measure it, right? Like, I can't remember the exact saying, but you know what I mean. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right?
Yeah. So many one-liners around that. Gee, you've hit some of my all-time favorites in that minute or so there. And if we use that analogy around cell phones, right? Or mobile phones, what has and hasn't changed over the last 30 years. One thing for me that hasn't changed is that high-performing teams are accountable. However, the environment that we work within now has made not only measuring but enforcing accountability a lot harder because of the move to the hybrid workplace. So we are now more reliant on the honesty and the work ethics of our teams, which means metrics, behaviours, compensation plans are even more important to be motivating the right behaviours, because we simply can't see them all day, every day, like we used to. Yes, there's certainly some technology out there. I've invested into a brand called Icana.ai. It measures phone, video, and look, we're working on some fantastic face-to-face options, but actually measures all your sales interactions, provides you coaching, provides you analysis. It's a terrific tool. And I've invested in that because I think it's doing better than sales leaders. So there's some help out there from some of these tools. However, those principles of being accountable and having an accountable team are super important, particularly now when it's harder than ever for us to measure them. I also really like the piece around leaders leading by example. I think too often that is falling down, and what I particularly see now is not enough leaders and sales leaders carrying the bag. And that doesn't mean they have a quota that's 100% or 50% of their teams, but what it does mean is they're contributing sales into the business, because that builds respect. And then the third piece there around what you walk past is what you accept. Right? You've got to be really clear on your standards and what you measure. So there are lots and lots of really basic principles that we've gone through in just 20 minutes. And I really like when we can have these episodes just to take things back to the core, back to the basics, as your background behind you, strip things back to the brick wall, right? So that we can actually talk through the really big golf balls that move progress. So one last question for you, Glenn. You're a sales leader at the helm of a team. right? I mean, not dissimilar to where you're at now with your new business, right? You're looking to really supercharge growth over the next 12 months. Where would you start? Where would you focus?
So the first thing I would probably do is, as difficult as it might be, would be to like tighten up the team, right? Like I would be brutally honest about who is succeeding and who is not succeeding. And I would be focusing down on the winner, the winning teams, right? And getting rid of the crappy salespeople. I don't know how to say it in a nicer way, right? And so, really, really keeping the A players. And, and I don't, it doesn't sound like in this sort of question, the way you're posing, I have time to be hiring new ones, right? So I'm kind of like focusing on my A team, right? The other thing I would do is, I've learned several times going in and out of this mistake is to like simplify your offer, right? Like focus on your winning propositions, right? And I always have this like I didn't get a chance to drop too many of my one-liners from the book or whatever, but I like to lose quickly in the game of sales, I'd rather be last than second, right? Because second is just the first loser. And I don't want to be hanging around, bringing in engineers and flying people out and taking them golfing, trying to win a deal that I know I'm not going to win, right? So, I want to, I want to simplify my offer, go with my winning strategies and leave the rest behind and focus on that sort of a stuff, right? I would look at my funnel and I would clear out anything that's not real, like just brutally carve it up and focus in on what are the real deals, and then look at the mathematics of do they meet anywhere near the objectives of what you're trying to hit. And if not, you've got to get the number back up, right? But you've got all this noise that kind of, we got all these deals, but you don't, right? And you know exactly what I'm talking about, I'm sure, right? I would challenge everyone to whatever kind of prospecting they're doing, whatever kind of marketing, front-end marketing, lead generation or whatever, I would double it. So however the investment is being proposed or delivered in some way, whether it's, telemarketers doing front end and, BDRs, SDRs, whatever that whole chain of events is that drives leads out through I would double that effort, right? And to drive the prospecting to get the A team, because you fired everyone else, in front of the best leads as fast as possible, right? And I'm really strong about pitching, sharpening, having a sharp pitch, right? And so on my website, there's a thing called the punch, perfect pitch, and close. I won't go into it now. There's not enough time, but it's how you develop a pitch that doesn't suck, right? And it's how you get attention, how you keep attention, and how you figure out, and how you deliver a proper presentation. And then at the end, the customer, if you've done it right, usually closes themselves, right? And of course, you're measuring the numbers. We talked about that several times tonight. And you want to, whenever you're in one of these high, environments where you have to like improve productivity or results really quickly, which is the sense I got from the question, I would reward the results quickly. There's not this delayed compensation factor. You'd have early and repeatable, not repeatable, but recognizable like rewards that happened and that really feed the greed, right? And it doesn't, you can say what you want, but greed is a significant motivator, especially amongst commissioned salespeople, right? Leaders lead first, right? Or the top guy's got to be out in front, leading the pack.
Yeah, cool. Okay, lots of things in there. The ones I'll just quickly repeat are get rid of the deadwood. It's very rare I work with a sales team that doesn't have the bottom 20 to 25% not contributing, and I'm seeing more and more sales leaders do that right now. Get rid of the deadwood. Focus on the real deals, not the pretend deals. Get out there, lead by example, measure progress, and incentivize what's going to work. Excellent. Thank you, Glenn. We've had Glenn Poulos today. Glenn, where else can people learn more about you if they'd like to connect?
So I have a website where it talks about my book, but if they want to talk to me or communicate in any way, LinkedIn's the best way. I'm there all the time and happy to communicate with anyone that wants to reach out there.
Excellent.
And happy to talk to them there. So.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, I can't remember if you call them gold nuggets, but we've had a few of those, which your dogs originally agreed with us at the start there on. They've absolutely quietened down. Thank you. They must be listening intently to the topic of today. But thank you very much. A number of gold nuggets in there, teams that are listening. Yeah, please make sure you've written down 2 or 3 things that you can tweak to your business from today. That would be my strong recommendation. But until next time, please keep living in a world of possibility, and you'll be amazed by what you can achieve. Bye for now. Want to be kept up to date with any of our free materials to help you build the best sales teams possible? Well, the easiest way you can do so is to follow us on your favourite social media channel. We're at Stronger Sales Teams on most of them, and if you DM us Stronger, we'll send you right back some great resources to help you build your super-powered sales team. If you'd like a little more help, please get in touch directly and book a free discovery call with me. I run a limited number of these sessions, and they're free for my podcast listeners. I'd love to help you out. Until then, see you next week for another podcast of Stronger Sales Teams.